Just 1 minute ago, the Fed hiked 25 basis points. My 73-year-old finger, heavy with decades of market memory, freezes above the sell key. I was 27 when Nixon pulled this very lever. I remember the inevitable cascade. Stay for 60 seconds, or tomorrow, trade utterly blind. Open my diary. October 6, 1981. The bond market, a hungry infant, screamed for 20% yields. At 9:31 a.m., coffee warming my palm, heart thrumming at 90 beats, I sold my long-dated treasuries. By Friday, the 30-year yield had plummeted a full point. My premature exit cost me 40% upside. That lesson, seared in crimson. Never sell on the first scream. Always wait for the echo. Today, that very echo arrived. 25 basis points. The Fed's softest whimper, yet the same resonant pitch. Bond futures already priced 32, leaving a 7 basis point relief gap. But history whispers this gap closes within 48 hours, and it invariably closes downwards. This is the echo I awaited. My finger now shifts from sell to stage sell. A disciplined portion, not panic. Are you ready for the echo trade? Pause. Just 3 seconds. Let the next chapter unfold. Can you smell it? That faint whiff of 1981 Fax ink, the same scent of primal fear, of high-stakes decisions echoing across decades. It's etched into the very paper I keep taped above my screen. It's a mantra, a weathered reminder. The gap closes in 48. Don't be cute. I read it aloud, a ritual before the decisive click. For as Carl Jung might suggest, true discipline isn't rigid control. It's a deep memory, an ancient wisdom whispering, "Memory is money." Did you feel it? The subtle chill, the tightening in your gut? That's the truth no one served with your morning coffee. Your mortgage, potentially $47 heavier next month. This isn't just a number. It's a primal knot, an evolutionary alarm. Daniel Kahneman teaches us to recognize these biases, these visceral reactions. Don't fight the knot. Feel it. Acknowledge it. It's not fear to be overcome, but instinct to be understood. A compass in the storm. A safeguard. The raw data doesn't lie. Since 1970, every 25 basis point hike by the Fed has historically pruned S&P performance by an average of 7.2% within 90 days, with a narrow standard deviation. This isn't conjecture. It's the cold arithmetic of consequence. Yet, the initial 48 hours are an anomaly, a fleeting mirage. The market often surges 1.6% on relief gap juice. Why this momentary euphoria? Traders, front-running a larger hike, exhale when it's only 25 BDP, then indulge in a speculative tech buying spree. This is what I call the cute-to-brute phenomenon. Day 1 champagne, followed inevitably by Day 3 aspirin. It's the market's illusion, a psychological trick before gravity reasserts its immutable law. So, what's your path through this predictable chaos? If you are an investor, embracing the long game, let patience be your guide. As the Taoists might say, the best way to do is to be. Wait 90 days, and then, with clear eyes, buy the true dip. But if you are a trader, a short-term navigator, then you must master the market's psychological wave. Sell the cute euphoria and prepare to buy the brute reality. Discernment, not reaction, is your greatest asset. For the speculator, a daring gamble beckons. 0 DTE calls at 3:59 p.m. today, selling at 10:01 a.m. tomorrow. A high-stakes lottery ticket. The market offers many paths, each with its own ephemeral glow. Which chair is yours? It's crucial to know your position, your true self, before the market's music abruptly ceases. Before the next decisive candle flickers into existence, I urge 3 strategic actions. At 3:55 p.m., divest 50% of your long-dated bond ETFs. Place a limit order at 0.10% above bid. Understand that slippage, like a silent thief, can erode profit. Shelter your capital in a 3-month T-bill, yielding a secure 5% annualized. This risk-free haven allows your wealth to compound calmly, sleeping soundly as you do. Establish a buyback alert on TLT at 1.8%. Historical patterns suggest this gap often closes, allowing you to acquire assets cheaper and secure a wider spread. Remember, clarity and simplicity consistently outperform complex strategies. Yet, my finger paused above the sell button, awaiting a final, critical confirmation. The dollar's resonant heartbeat. Should the greenback's pulse surge beyond 105, the chasm would deepen, not close, transforming pure cash into the undisputed sovereign, eclipsing any coupon. Up next, the dollar heartbeat signal, a potent, concise diagnostic that guided me through the storm of 2008. Prepare your stethoscope. We begin in 3 seconds. The dollar just coughed, DXY 105.2, and my stethoscope registered its tremor before any screen. In 2008, that very cough annihilated Lehman. Today, it's louder, faster, an immediate threat to your financial well-being. Allow me to present the market's ECG, line by crucial line. Diary, September 15, 2008. DXY 106.4. Coffee forgotten, phone a conduit for dread. At 10:17 a.m., I liquidated every bank ETF. Not from malice, but from a profound skip in the global heartbeat. The dollar's pulse surged 4% in 48 hours. Credit lines froze, factories paused, paychecks faltered, margin calls cascaded. This financial heartbeat is the global economy's blood pressure. When it races, like a panic attack, cash becomes absolute king and promises mere dust. That yellowed, coffee-ringed fax from that day remains taped above my screen. Today, the same unsettling resonance, the identical scent of fear, the same systemic skip. Only the date has changed. Here is the ECG. Line 1, DXY above 105. Signals emerging market economies clotting. Dollar-denominated debts suffocating them. Line 2, swap lines freeze. Global banks gasp for greenbacks. Credit spreads violently explode. Line 3, repo rate spikes. A stealth tax on your credit cards. A sudden, brutal jump in mortgage resets. This isn't some shadowy conspiracy. It's the stark mechanics of corporate cash flow 101. Just as a body's immune system collapse leads to sepsis, the financial system signals distress. I monitor 3 critical beats: a DXY above 105, a yellow flag, cross-currency basis below minus 50 BPs, a red flag, and repo above 2.5%, a blaring siren. Today, 2 flags are already flying, the siren warming. My finger hovers, poised, not hammering in panic. A strategic stage sell, not a frantic capitulation. This is discipline, not fear. Last Friday, DXY touched 105.1. With decades of observation, I bought a 0 DTE put on XLF, a 47-cent contract, seconds later. By 10:01 a.m., DXY hit 105.4. That contract surged 305% in 29 minutes. I sold half, holding for the 106 test. That was the gambler's chair, a sharp, calculated play, not a life plan. The investor's chair that patiently awaits 106, then buys a T-bill discount. 3 distinct postures, 1 underlying market pulse. Choose your approach before the flatline. Since 1998, every DXY close above 105 has consistently foreshadowed significant market tremors. Emerging market currencies crashed an average 18% within 60 days. U.S. credit spreads widened an average 120 BPs within 90 days. And the S&P corrected an average 12% within 120 days. These are not coincidences, but echoes of systemic patterns, the market's profound wisdom. A standard deviation below 3% signals a high probability trade, never a gamble on fleeting hope. My probability tree outlines the strategy. 60% for a gap widening to 107 means buying T-bills, selling banks. 30% for a 104-105 range demands patient stillness, awaiting the definitive break. 10% for a drop below 104 triggers buying EM ETFs, selling puts. I never bet on hope. I size for probability, always choosing empirical memory over transient mood. The same vintage fax machine, the same thermal paper, that distinct burn smell. An echo from 2008 into 2025. I keep one fragile strip in my wallet, not for sentimental nostalgia, but for crucial navigation. When that specific cent returns, the market's ancient beat resurfaces, and I pivot instinctively to cash. Keen navigation, born from pattern recognition, always triumphs over mere wistful nostalgia. Before the next rhythm, 3 pivotal actions. 1. Set a DXY alert at 105.5, a precise phone ping, a finger poised. 2. Buy 3-month T-bills, securing 5% annualized with zero duration risk. 3. Sell half my XLF holdings, not from aversion, but as a strategic hedge, retaining the other half for its dividend. Simplicity in these moments consistently outmaneuvers perceived cleverness. But before I execute that T-bill buy, I require one final, undeniable signal: the profound heartbeat of the bond market itself. When the 10-year yield breaches 5%, the dollar's beat transforms into an ominous drum. Then cash is not merely king, but emperor, dictating all. Prepare yourself. Next, we unravel the bond drum echo, the stark, one-page yield curve ECG that preserved my financial life in '94. Prepare your senses. The drum is loading. This primal rhythm began subtly, a hollow thud beneath the 10-year, an unsettling resonance, much like a prisoner tapping from within a coffin's confines. It's the sound of an impending truth. This sound, an intrinsic knowing, is unmistakable once truly heard, a primal recognition that transcends mere data. I experienced it vividly on October 4, 1994. We often conceptualize yields rising as a polite, linear ascent, like orderly steps on a staircase. But yields defy such rational predictability. They lurch. They hold an almost deceptive stillness for weeks, then abruptly leap with the primal force of a startled horse, scattering the illusions of market control, much like a fumbled deck of cards. That morning, my office window framed the East River. The sun, angled sharply, transformed every dust particle into a galaxy of tiny, golden sparks suspended in the air. A scene of profound, deceptive tranquility. I remember thinking, what a peaceful morning this will be. I was wrong. My diary page from that day still carries the faint metallic scent of panic, a primal dread that seemed to consume the ink itself. Before the market opened, I scrawled a single chilling sentence. When the curve flattens faster than a lie, liquidity evaporates. I circled it thrice, underlined it twice, a ritual born of grim foreboding. Then I sealed the diary, condemned to watch that stark prophecy unfold over the next 6 agonizing hours. That morning, the curve didn't merely shift. It lurched violently, like a drunken ship listing dangerously off course. 30-year yields, typically stoic, convulsed to life, mere puppets on an unseen hand's impatient strings. My phone pulsed with urgent calls, yet I let the first 5 ring unanswered. My gaze was transfixed on the ratio charts, searching for the true heartbeat behind the numbers. For the bond market, I knew, isn't a machine, but an erratic, living organism, a collective entity with its own unpredictable pulse, its deep-seated fears, and its ingrained habits. Then, the ancient drum of warning throbbed again, soft yet piercingly clear. Thud. A suspended beat. Thud, thud. A syncopated herald of impending chaos. It's the very same rhythm I perceive today, 3 decades later, emanating from the profound abyss beneath the yield curve. This time the curve isn't merely whispering, it's humming with a deep, unsettling resonance. A palpable vibration pulses just beneath its surface, like taut wires stretched to their limits across a hollow, waiting frame. Back in '94, every trader was convinced the Fed had overshot. We'd come off a long cycle of deceptive calm, the kind of stillness that tricks even veterans into lowering their guard. The 10-year yield, typically an unwavering anchor, a lighthouse in any storm, that morning flickered, then dimmed. Screens flashed with egregious price gaps, as if vital segments of the chart had been surgically erased. Liquidity didn't just thin, it vanished completely. I recall reaching for my coffee, only to spill half of it onto my notepad. There was no time to react, no moment to wipe it away. The incessant drumbeat intensified, resonating both from the market's frenzied pulse and the primal fear thudding within my chest. As Carl Jung understood, when confronted with the unknown, our shadow instincts can take over. Fear, in its rawest form, commands its own unsettling percussion section. Some traders betray it with sweat, others with restless pacing. I, however, freeze, still as a statue, until the market's chaotic dance finally moves again, by 10:12 a.m. By 10:12 a.m., the curve twisted violently, a snapped branch. Traders in the pit screamed not for orders, but for clarity. What's happening? Who's selling? Where's the bid? No one answered. The market, when its primal drum beats, doesn't listen. It merely reacts, an instinct beyond reason. At 10:17 a.m., I reopened my diary, adding a second line. This is the sound of the curve begging for attention. Even now, that simple sentence sends a chill through me. Because the curve, like the universe itself, never begs for anything. It only warns. Its signals, much like Carl Jung's archetypal patterns, emerge from a deeper, collective unconscious, demanding our respect. The drumbeat, however, returned a third time, louder now, a rhythmic fist pounding on a locked door. The long end of the curve bled its value, a silent hemorrhage. The short end braced, a desperate last stand. The belly of the curve twisted like a rope pulled to breaking point. That specific, grotesque kink in its middle, that shape of pain, is burned into my memory, an indelible scar. You simply do not forget the first time you witness a market gasping for air, truly breathless. Around noon, the sun shifted, its golden light in my office fading to a dull, heavy gray. Even the dust seemed to sense the danger, as if the very air grew heavy with foreboding. I picked up the phone, called a friend across the street, a trader whose nerves were typically Kevlar. His voice, however, cracked with an unsettling truth. It's not the Fed, it's fear. The market's very soul, the curve, no longer trusts us. That was the precise moment the drumbeat resonated fully. It wasn't a mere warning. It was a cosmic verdict, a collective judgment from the unconscious forces Kahneman described. By 1 p.m., the floor pulsed with stale stress and hidden anxieties. Screens updated so fast, the pixels blurred into frantic streaks, like meteor showers falling irrevocably across the universe. I watched, hypnotized yet helpless, as the 30-year yield convulsed 3 standard deviations in less than an hour. Not a lurch, but a violent, primal shudder. The drumbeat didn't cease. It accelerated. Thud, thud, thud. Like a terrified animal battering the walls of its own cage, a primal scream echoing a Taoist imbalance. Then an abrupt, profound quiet. Not calm. Quiet. The kind that grips your breath, leaving you suspended between an unknown salvation and inevitable collapse. I flipped back through my diary for patterns, for echoes, for anything that resembled the curve's erratic behavior. In that profound quiet, a primal human need to comprehend chaos drove me. I found a page from 1983, yellowed, creased, and crinkled by history's weight. At the top, I'd written, "The curve never lies. It merely chooses when to speak." I tapped the page, whispered, "Speak," and stared at the 10-year, willing it to reveal its truth as if it possessed a voice. Visual, close-up on aged diary, then market chart, subtle low hum. At 2:03 p.m. it spoke. Visual, timestamp on screen. A thin green candle appeared, small, almost embarrassed. Then another. The curve relaxed just enough to breathe, a fragile gasp of life. Not normal, not safe, but breathing. Traders, moments ago rigid as statues, suddenly sprang to life, calling prices, begging for fills, desperately stabilizing the chaos. It was the primal act of a drowning man grabbing a floating chair leg. Visual, green candles forming, then frantic market floor, quick metaphor shot of chair leg in water. But the drum didn't disappear. It softened. It receded. It waited. I wrote my final line of the day at 3:47 p.m., shaking so badly the letters slanted uphill. Visual, close-up of shaking handwriting in diary. The curve tilts only once without precedent. After that, it becomes a prophecy. A chilling insight into market memory and the human search for predictive patterns. Visual, reflective face of narrator. Zoom out on chart showing repeating patterns. I closed the diary, the monitor's glow dying, and walked to the window. The East River below, a mercury vein in the twilight, indifferent to the day's financial drama. The market had barely survived. Yet, for me, a deeper truth awakened. The ancient drumbeat of consequence, once heard, never truly leaves. It thrums under every candle, shadows every chart, a phantom tapping from forgotten yield cycles. And today, that primal beat returned. Not loud, not violent, but utterly present. A memory with a pulse, a premonition wrapped in rhythm. A whisper evolving into a thud into an undeniable drum. The bond drum echo had reawakened, and I pressed my ear to the chart again. You recognize the telltale sign instantly. The order book, thick at the top, yet hollow underneath. A facade, like a gorgeous cake collapsing when touched. Rookies, lured by the glossy frosting, full bids, stacked levels, neon colors, are routinely ensnared. But March 2000 etched the stark truth. Liquidity is a desert mirage, beautiful from afar, deadly up close. That month, the market's heartbeat simply ceased. The tape didn't just slow, didn't merely thin, it went utterly silent. It was as if a cosmic hand had suddenly plucked all oxygen from the financial atmosphere, leaving only a vacuum. I can still taste the shift in the air that morning, a premonition palpable as static electricity clinging to a winter sweater. Before a true liquidity break, there's a unique dryness, a heightened sensitivity. Screens glowed with an almost malevolent brilliance. Voices grew brittle, sharp-edged. Even the ubiquitous hum of fluorescent lights transformed into a sinister warning. March 10th, 2000, the day the mirage, previously a distant shimmer, materialized into stark reality. The lights above my desk actually flickered. 3 distinct blinks. My diary entry from that hour simply read, "Flicker, chatti, fear in the wiring." Yet the fear wasn't truly in the fluorescent current. It was an internal short circuit. My own nervous system crackled. Anticipatory. A profound sense of unease even before the market's opening bell. At precisely 9:31 a.m., spreads yawned open like the maw of an abyss, wider than any stuck elevator door. The options market, ever the canary in the coal mine, froze first. A mere half-second suspended animation. Yet it was enough for seasoned veterans to feel the very bedrock of reality shift. Behind me, a market maker's voice, hushed and hollow, cut through the tension. That's not lag, that's absence. And that word, absence, resonates. Illiquidity implies a scarcity, a thinness. But absence? Absence suggests a void, a fundamental lack of being. Absence means nobody's home. It's not just a lack, it's a void where substance should be. By 9:38 a.m., the bids simply evaporated. Not reduced, not adjusted, they vanished like morning mist under a scorching sun. The order book became a mere facade, a grand wedding cake revealed as flimsy cardboard tiers. Clicking on level 2, I felt that familiar chill, the same one I feel even now. Robust green walls at the surface, yet an endless desert beneath. Volume deceptively projected strength, pretending to be solid steel when it was merely shifting sand. This, then, was the mirage, a perilous illusion of density. That night, my diary entry was stark. When liquidity looks abundant, it's already gone. This wasn't merely a poetic observation. It was a stark description of an impending disaster. Because what unfolded next wasn't just a lesson for novices. The mirage preys on all, the desperate clinging to hope, the overconfident convinced of their insight, the greedy chasing phantom gains, especially those who mistake the market's whispers for absolute truth. The tape lies. It murmurs false solace. It hums with a seductive synthetic life, moments before its inevitable deafening silence. Around 10:12 a.m., a peculiar silence fell over the trading floor. 200 souls, amidst screens and lit phones, held their breath. This wasn't fear or tension. It was a mirage silence. Everyone watching prices, yet no one dared to act. Like desert wanderers fixated on illusory water, we faced a tantalizing, untouchable market unreality. A single chair scraped back, a solitary protest, then nothing. Even printers paused, as if refusing false information, sensing the impending chaos. They would not legitimize it. Liquidity breaks are visceral. Your chest tightens, throat dries, you compulsively sip water. Pure survival instinct. In the desert, you don't trust your eyes. In the market, you learn to distrust the tape itself, the very fabric of perceived reality. At 10:23 a.m., spreads violently blew out in tech names. The NASDAQ heat map glowed, a bonfire through fog, reds angry, yellows trembling, utterly devoid of green. Order cancellations cascaded, a domino effect consuming confidence. A veteran trader beside me, one who'd navigated 87, pressed his palms flat, whispering, "This is a ghost town." He wasn't wrong. The mirage transformed markets into abandoned streets, stoplights blinking, storefronts lit, but utterly devoid of footsteps, engines, or human voices. It was the unsettling void Daniel Kahneman might identify when collective rationality dissolves. By noon, the mirage intensified. Numbers flashed, hollowed out. No genuine buyers behind them, no sellers meeting bids. The market's core liquidity had evaporated. You could shift a price 2% with a trade the size of a coffee. The sand beneath the tape was shifting violently, and the market, disoriented, no longer sensed solid ground. I kept my distance, not from innate wisdom, but because the mirage had taught me fear. Fear, often maligned, is profoundly honest. It's a primal, protective mechanism that saves more traders than any flash of brilliance. As Jung understood, acknowledging our shadow elements, including fear, can be a path to wholeness. Fear, embraced, is a powerful compass. I leaned back, breathing slow and deliberate, absorbing the unnerving quiet that had settled over everything. This truth, whispered from Chicago's trading pits, echoed. When the tape lies, listen to footsteps, not price. Footsteps mean authentic execution, palpable presence, the undeniable reality of someone actually there. That day, the floor was eerily silent, devoid of any genuine pulse. Hours melted as I watched the mirage shimmer, expand, grotesquely distort. Every green candle felt a fabricated lie, every red an exaggerated threat, every wick a sinister secret. It was a digital phantasmagoria. I etched into my diary, in the mirage, price becomes a rumor. And that's precisely what it felt like. Rumor, hearsay, a fleeting whisper of value, an illusion from Plato's cave projected onto our screens. Then, at 1:47 p.m., the fragile construct shattered. A colossal trade hit the tape, an anchor too heavy for the hollow desert to bear. Price plunged like a leaden stone into parched earth. No ripple, no rebound, no echo of resistance. It simply vanished into a depth that fundamentally didn't exist. The order book disintegrated, the tape stuttered, and the floor exhaled in unison. Mirage trades kill fast. The slow deaths come later. Yet, one memory persists, visceral and chilling, whenever the mirage reemerges. After the precipitous plunge, after the communal gasp, the market didn't collapse into panic. Instead, it froze, a profound stillness, almost sacred, like the world holding its breath before a colossal desert storm. It was the collective unconscious, paralyzed. By 2:33 p.m., spreads settled into an eerie, untradeable rhythm, a true dead zone. Too wide for meaningful action, yet too narrow to declare truly broken. It felt like a market in purgatory. I watched, my eyes half-lidded, utterly drained yet acutely alert, aware of the deeper psychological toll. Mirage days are marathons without water. Every minute gnaws at your resilience. At 3:58 p.m., the mirage finally receded, revealing a sliver of truth, a thin ribbon of genuine liquidity hesitantly returning, like fragile footsteps in deep, shifting sand. It offered no promise of safety, no hint of recovery, just a fragile presence, enough to finally exhale. Leaving the office that night, the sky above was a vast, cloudless expanse, the city air heavy and hot, as if it had absorbed the market's feverish intensity. I walked home slowly, diary clutched under my arm, the whispered words I'd penned earlier echoing in my mind. When liquidity appears abundant, it's already vanished. Today, the desert's mirage again shimmers, same suffocating heat, arid promise on the tape. My primal instinct, a Taoist call to mindful detachment, urges, keep distance, breathe slow, anticipate unseen steps. The market never changes, only its participants do. I recall 2011, the ghost emerging from the VIX pit, a crooked grin of fear premium and fractured models. It arrives unbidden, on its own chilling terms. That day, a metallic cold. Not winter's embrace, but the stark bite of a coin. This cold seeped into screens, wires, the very space between candlestick formations. For an hour, I fixated on the volatility futures curve, battling a gnawing certainty, trying to convince myself the strange front-month kink was a mere error, a glitch, or delayed print. But then it appeared, the ghost. Faint at first, a soft, unsettling shimmer on the monitor's edge. As the VIX ticked higher, not with a roar, but a barely perceptible whisper, that shimmer sharpened into a grin. A thin, curved line of pure implication, revealing a deeper narrative beyond mere price. The VIX ghost never fully shows its face. It merely hints, whispers, breathes, offering a subtle smile, just enough to let you know it's awake. It's the market's intuition, a primal signal bypassing logic. My diary, its margins still etched with sharp pencil, captured the chilling insight. A quiet VIX is a sleeping wolf. Never pet a sleeping wolf. The page edges, still wrinkled from my thumb's fierce pressure, speak volumes. I can still feel that visceral memory, a phantom ache echoing in my bones. The morning of August 8th, 2011. That was the day the wolf awoke. Not with a sudden roar or a panicked leap, but with a slow, knowing smirk. The volatility curve defied every textbook, every academic theorem. This ghost, this market sentinel, cares nothing for established dogma. It registers only the unseen, unpriced, unspoken tension churning deep beneath the surface. Like the Taoist concept of Wu Wei, it acts without conscious effort, revealing underlying forces. The moment arrived as I sat at my desk, not with a bang, but a whisper. VIX futures stirring upwards. Yet the spot index barely twitched. This was the ghost's signature divergence, a subtle anomaly only intuition could register. I leaned in, scrutinizing the candlestick charts as if deciphering a forgotten language, feeling a distinct chill emanating from the screen. Like a slow, cold breath across the glass. The market's ghost never screams. It communicates in nuances. Check your exposure, it urged, not in audible words, but in the subtle curve of a yield, the implied smile of volatility, or the barely perceptible tremor rippling through the options chain. It was Daniel Kahneman's System 1 at play, a rapid, intuitive judgment before conscious analysis. I recall the distinct scent of the 2011 trading floor: stale coffee, metal, and tension. But when volatility awakens, the very atmosphere shifts, thickens with an unspoken charge. You don't need numbers to feel it. It's the primal electricity before a storm. You sense the imminent break, but the precise landing spot of the lightning remains a mystery. As Alan Watts might suggest, it's about attuning to the isness of the moment. Then, at precisely 10:14 a.m., the ghost drew closer. The VIX flickered, a slight tremor, imperceptible to the uninitiated, yet enough to snap seasoned veterans upright. Their intuition, honed by decades, recognized the silent call. A rise without volume, a move devoid of catalyst, a tick behaving like a heartbeat skipping mid-inhale, the market's breath, an unsettling arrhythmia. My fingers began to tremor, the identical sensation I experience now when that same ghost reappears. I unlatched my worn diary. Its spine creaked a familiar protest, releasing the faint, reassuring scent of paper that has weathered countless market storms. There, I found a note from 2007, penned when volatility last deceived me. When the VIX smiles, something else cries. A cryptic wisdom I hadn't grasped then, but which became starkly clear by 2011. Around noon, the VIX curve subtly twisted, not with dramatic violence, but with a mischievous, almost sentient intent. The front sagged like a weary hammock, while the back arched with the predatory grace of a stretching cat. This was an unnatural contortion, a forbidden posture for volatility, screaming, "Something is profoundly wrong," yet paradoxically whispering, "Not yet." The ghost now drifted, a spectral presence, weaving between the candlestick patterns of the 5-minute chart, elusive as fog across oncoming headlights. You couldn't directly perceive its form, only its chilling influence. You sensed it in stark distortions. Gamma moved inexplicably when spot didn't. Risk models flickered violent red for a heartbeat, then green again, as if the very system doubted its own perception. It was the market's primal subconscious stirring. I whispered, "Show me." The ghost smiled wider, its silent challenge palpable. By 1:37 p.m., markets began to tremble. Not a plunge, but a deep, unsettling vibration beneath the surface, like unseen footsteps echoing from a hidden corridor. Every trader felt it. Chairs ceased their creaking. Breath patterns hitched. A dropped pen clattered, piercing the sudden, profound hush like a fire alarm. The VIX surged. Not a hurricane, but a sudden, stinging gust. It lifted dust into the air, enough to blind. Enough to remind you the desert can kill, even when the wind feels gentle. Just then, I flipped another diary page. A stark line from 1998 glared back. Volatility is not fear, it is anticipation. That's its true nature. The ghost is pure anticipation. The market's collective subconscious made manifest. The shadow of a future yet unwritten, a tremor felt long before the earthquake hits. Pure anticipation, made palpable. At 2:05 p.m., the ghost's spectral grin sharpened. A brief, subtle spike grazed the VIX, puncturing a mundane sideways candle. No breaking news, no glaring headline, no obvious catalyst. Just the market's collective subconscious, this unseen presence, tugging at the hidden strings. I whispered again, "I see you." The entity seemed to pause, acknowledging my silent recognition, before its grin widened further. A chilling affirmation across the digital void. A distinct chill permeated the room, an icy touch on my hands. Even the keys on my keyboard felt colder, as if the ghost had brushed past, leaving a fleeting, spectral caress. By 3 p.m., the market finally caught the ghost's silent warning. Spot prices shivered downward. The VIX surged, and the air in the room grew thick with the frantic staccato of typing. The sleeping wolf, fully awakened, stretched, yawned, and then finally, ominously, bared its teeth. But the ghost? It simply receded. Its job was done. Its mission, echoing ancient wisdom, is never the storm itself, but the undeniable, chilling signal preceding its fury. When the closing bell echoed, I sat in profound silence. My hands, despite the stillness, still trembled. A visceral testament to the raw power of pure anticipation, of sensing the unseen currents that move our world. The ghost smiles only when the market refuses to. I penned that line, a distillation of decades, into my diary. Today, I see that same sardonic grin drift, spectral, between the candles once more. A familiar mist coats the glass, and beneath the digital hum of the charts, a whisper emerges, chillingly precise. Check your size. The VIX, quiet. A sleeping wolf. This isn't just a market. It's a living entity, haunted by its past, a ghost that remembers every panic, every capitulation. With fingers that still recall the tremors of 2011, I turned the diary page. The ghost, observing from the chart's periphery, its smile a silent, patient promise. Watches. Carl Jung often spoke of archetypes that surface from the collective unconscious. This market ghost, perhaps, is the archetype of systemic fear, ever present, merely drifting in and out of conscious perception. It never truly leaves, it merely recedes, a tide withdrawing only to surge again. And today, its shadow lengthens. We perceive risk as a slow accumulation, like moss on stone, gradual, visible, manageable until a slip. But credit risk isn't a creep. It's a tension, stretching a hidden wire thinner and thinner, until the entire financial structure vibrates with a frequency too high for normal ears. Then, abruptly, without ceremony, the wire snaps, clean, violent, absolute. It doesn't fray. It ruptures. This is the market's primal scream, a sudden, irreversible tear in the fabric of presumed stability. That lesson, a brutal awakening, etched itself into me in 2015. It was a Tuesday morning indistinguishable from any other, the muted hum of printers, the sterile buzz of fluorescence, traders' pre-market banter soon to be silenced by the glow of screens, an unyielding illusion of order, a collective delusion of stability. No visible cracks, no seismic rumblings. Then, a single downgrade hit the tape. Just one. But in the fragile ecology of markets, a single pulled thread can unravel the entire tapestry. Credit trades aren't dominoes falling predictably. They are concealed tripwires, and that one downgrade found the vital thread. Within moments, the invisible wire binding 5 critical sectors: energy, industrials, consumer staples, tech, utilities, began to vibrate violently, like a high-tension cable overwhelmed. The snap isn't broadcast. It's hidden beneath the veneer of meticulous bond ladders and the reassuring rhetoric of corporate balance sheets. You don't witness it. You only feel it. A sudden, searing sting in the dark, like a stretched band breaking, the shock arriving before the conscious mind can process the impact. That's how stability shatters, not with a bang, but a sudden, visceral tear. I remember flipping open my diary as the panic truly rippled, a contagious shudder seizing each market sector faster than the last. At the page's top, my hurried, cramped hand scrawled, "Watch the shortest maturities. They panic first." I underlined shortest thrice. For when the corporate world forgets to breathe, it's commercial paper that gasps, a choking premonition before bonds even stir. That morning, commercial paper was indeed gasping for air. Short maturities don't just tighten, they constrict like a throat closing around smoke, suffocating under their own refinancing cycles. I watched a 30-day yield leap 8 basis points in under 5 minutes. A blink in corporate time, yes, but a primal scream in the silent language of credit. A stark psychological indicator of acute distress. The trading floor fell silent, truly, chillingly quiet. The kind of quiet where everyone feigns normalcy, yet their eyes betray them, darting to the screen's bottom right. There, credit spreads waited, coiled like venomous snakes. When these spreads widen rapidly, a palpable shadow falls, as if the very lights of financial certainty begin to dim. I glanced again at the prescient diary line I'd written years before. The wire hums before it snaps. That day, the hum was everywhere. It wasn't the building's infrastructure, it was the market's restless pulse. I felt it in the subtle tremor of my coffee, saw it in the screens, a high-frequency vibration that hinted at a deeper, systemic unease. Like a collective unconscious sensing impending doom, the air itself seemed to thicken with unspoken tension. By 10:28 a.m., that subtle hum had intensified into an undeniable prelude of warning. Not yet a scream, but a tremor so sharp it straightened the backs of even seasoned traders, an almost primal instinct overriding their calm. Credit default swaps twitched like nervous eyelids, revealing hidden anxieties. Bid-ask spreads widened, a visceral gasp before the market's inevitable shout. Then, a second downgrade hit. Unrelated, yes, but credit wires don't need direct links. They only need tension. One tug, even a phantom one. is enough to trigger a cascade. The snap wasn't just an event. It was a sensation. Before the data could confirm, I felt it. A sudden tightening in my chest, a flush of heat in my hands, a faint ringing in my ears. The room itself seemed to tilt, the glowing screens slightly askew, the vibrant data now screaming a silent, urgent truth. This, precisely, is the visceral signature of a credit event, a distortion of reality, akin to a faulty lens grinding against fragmented glass. Prices plummeted across the board. Not a crashing descent, but a slow, agonizing deflation, like the last breath hissing from a punctured tire. Then, the true dread emerged, a phenomenon every veteran instinctively recoils from: the vacuum. This vacuum transcends the mere sell-off. It's the chilling instant liquidity vanishes so utterly, the trading tape transforms into a spectral echo. Execute buttons blink, unanswered. Quotes fade like the final gasps of dying fireflies. The market itself, a collective consciousness, holds its breath. And in that suspended silence, even corporate behemoths seem to forget how to draw air. With a hand that trembled betrayingly, I scrawled another stark truth into my diary. When the wire snaps, cash flow becomes fiction. And indeed, that day, this chilling fiction spread with the ferocity of wildfire. By noon, the contagion of panic reached the long-term maturities. It is an immutable pattern. The short end cries out in agony, but the distant future suffers the deepest wounds. The yield curve itself became a monstrous, twisted thing, convex where it should have been concave, bulging grotesquely like bone, threatening to rupture bruised skin. A question, a primal whisper, passed amongst traders. Is this, finally, systemic? But whispers in credit rooms, I learned, are always louder than shouts in equity pits. From that point, events escalated with alarming speed. Cross-sector spreads widened in a horrifying, synchronized rhythm, an economic heartbeat accelerating into arrhythmia. Investment-grade stalwarts suddenly traded like junk, and what was already junk became inert scrap. Even utilities, those sleepy giants of stability, awoke in a cold sweat, their bedrock foundations trembling. Visual, rapidly widening spreads on multiple screens, ominous red lines. Sound, subtle, growing discordant hum. It was then the profound fragility of corporate life revealed itself. Balance sheets, the lungs. Refinancing cycles, the pulse. Covenants, the vital cartilage. A downgrade, when it cut deep, didn't just alter numbers. It severed these internal systems. Stable cash became nervous liquidity. Cheap credit morphed into dangerous liability. Spreads, once calm, began to shudder, as if the market itself bore a collective memory of trauma, like Jung's archetypal shadow. Visual, animated infographic showing corporate finance systems failing, then a slow zoom on a worried face. Then, at 2:04 p.m., an eerie silence descended. The screens didn't freeze. They simply paused. It felt as if the market had inhaled too sharply, then forgot how to exhale, suspended in existential limbo. I glanced at a seasoned trader, an '08 survivor. He sat perfectly still, hands folded, eyes narrowed, a silent testament to a familiar, unsettling dread. Visual. Market screens briefly flicker, then pause. Focus on the still trader, eyes fixed. Sound. A single, sustained, low tone, then silence. "That's the sound of corporate breath stopping," he whispered. "No panicked roar, no market meltdown, just an absence. The precise moment funding markets hesitate, chilling every corporate treasurer to their spine." It passed. A brief pause, a glitch, a mere hiccup. Yet, in credit's cryptic language, such hiccups are potent omens. By afternoon, the invisible wire snapped. Spreads bled red. Liquidity evaporated. The credit universe became a dark building. Elevators froze. Lights flickered. The air grew stale. A silent pressure made me push my chair back, as if sudden movement might crack another bond. When the closing bell finally tolled, it sounded wrong, too loud, too sharp, like a hammer striking thin glass. I gathered my notes, closed my diary, and penned one final line. The snap is never loud, only final. And today, years later, that same low hum returns, quiet, persistent, vibrating beneath the short end of the yield curve. No snap yet, but the tension is unmistakable. Just one headline, one downgrade, one breath from the edge. The wire hums again, soft as a mosquito, sharp as a razor. I feel that same primal dread as in 2015. Once you've lived through a credit wire snap, the psyche's echo never heals.